November 21st, public hearing. Our meeting is called to order. We'll start with a roll call, Ms. LeBreau.
Ms. Blanks? Wait. Oh. Ms. Blanks?
Yes.
Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Cortez?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Ms. Fay?
Here.
Ms. Pullen?
Here.
Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
Mr. Winograd?
Here.
And Mr. Zdanowitz.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will begin with presentation from our own town manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and Town Councilors. For the record, Rick Ledwith, Town Manager. Tonight I'll be presenting an overview of an ordinance that seeks to amend certain restrictions, all of which are related to the operation of indoor recreation or amusement facility uses. I think the council will agree that this ordinance is really a continuation of the proactive efforts of the town council going back as far as 2016. Back in 2016, the town council directed staff to conduct an initiative to modernize certain sections of the zoning ordinances to permit a rapidly growing segment of the retail market, experiential, recreation, and restaurants. In general terms, this type of use combines an experiential use such as arcade games, bowling, billiards, etc., with the sale of food and/or alcoholic beverages, similar to the Dave & Buster's store concept. And today, this is known by a variety of terms such as experiential retail, eatertainment, or dinnertainment. To that end, the Town Council adopted changes to the zoning ordinances in 2017 that created a new class of zoning use, indoor recreation or amusement facility excluding nightclubs, which is defined as a space in a suitable and permanent building kept, used, maintained, advertised, and held out to and known by the public as primarily a place to pursue leisure activities or games of skill or scoring, including but not limited to pinball, video games, pool or billiards, bowling, roller skating, miniature golf, go-karting, racing, roller skating, trampoline or bounce parks, puzzle or adventure rooms, water parks or karaoke, but excluding the use of a disc jockey. If alcoholic drink is served in any indoor recreation or amusement facility, the facility must be at least 5,000 square feet in an area, and hot food shall also be offered for service. The service of alcoholic drink and hot food shall be adjunct to the primary function of recreation or amusement. The service of alcoholic drinks shall operate under the applicable liquor permit, with the exception of cafe permits, which shall not be permitted as provided in Connecticut General Statute Title 30, as amended in Chapter 45 of the Code of the Town of West Hartford, and comply with all Liquor Control Commission regulations appertaining thereto. Indoor recreation or amusement facilities shall be open during regularly posted hours, which are clearly marked and shall have no age restrictions. Earlier this fall, the new owners of Blueback Square Charter Realty Development, Blueback Capital Partners LLC, submitted an ordinance to amend certain restrictions pertaining to indoor recreation and amusement facilities. You may remember that after consultation with the council and Charter Realty, we agreed that the original ordinance should be withdrawn. Subsequently, the council invited Charter Realty to attend the Community Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting back in October to better explain their vision for Blueback Square and how certain changes to the zoning ordinances could support that vision. You'll notice the changes in the ordinance calls for what would allow indoor recreation or amusement facilities at 15,000 square feet or larger in the CBDH district, which is primarily the Blueback Square district, to remain open to 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, and to operate under a cafe permit with an ability to impose minimum age of entry. CPED then directed staff to prepare a modified version of that ordinance to address some of the expressed concerns, but still allow for flexibility in attracting new uses and businesses coming into the community. The result of that effort is the ordinance before you this evening. The ordinance has 3 separate amendments. Proposed changes to Section 177-2, the definition of indoor recreation or amusement facilities, to allow for a cafe permit and for the use to impose an age restriction. However, as written, this would be limited to only the CBDH district, and then further limited facilities of at least 15,000 square feet in size and that have an entertainment license. And you can see that towards the bottom at under number 1 at the bottom there. Proposed changes to Section 177-37.1 C to permit the hours of operation for this use to be extended from midnight to 1 a.m. The following classes and categories of uses listed in 177-6B shall not be permitted to be open to the public between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Indoor recreation or amusement facilities excluding nightclubs, dance halls, or dance clubs. Proposed changes to Section 177-36F to authorize the issuance of a cafe permit for indoor recreation or amusement facilities, provided they are 15,000 square feet or larger and located in the CBDH zoning district. The sale of alcoholic liquor is permitted under a hotel permit for beer, and then we've added a cafe permit for indoor recreation or amusement facilities 15,000 square feet or larger in the CBDH district. And if you go down to the bottom there, number 2, you can see that we've added under Connecticut General Statutes 30-22, we've amended it to add it or in any location in an indoor recreation or amusement facility 15,000 square feet or larger, again, in the CBDH district where food and or beverages are served. So the council may ask what controls are in place to ensure that this ordinance supports the use that we envision. And our staff feels that the proposed amendments, including the size-based limitations, and restriction in terms of eligibility to only to the CBDH district, coupled with the existing requirements for any indoor recreation or amusement use to seek approval under Section 177-442A from the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for a special use permit. So it is important to note that this process includes a public hearing based on a specific location and business with notification to abutters and approval or denial criteria based on specific findings to both the specific use and the user and to the specific location of the proposed use. In doing so, the TPZ is authorized to attach specific conditions to any approval, including limitations of hours or other operational restrictions in order to make the following affirmative finding: the location and size of the use, the nature and intensity of the operations connected with it, the size of the lot in relation to it, and the location of the lot with respect to streets giving access to it are such that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the district in which it is located. Additionally, the special use permit process requires that an approved use appear back before the TPZ for a further public hearing and review period not less than 2 years after the original issuance of the permit.
Rick, is there supposed to be another slide? Because I think that was from the old, I don't know. No.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, it's not actually
Okay.
added to the bottom of
Okay,
that slide.
sorry about that.
Yep,
Okay.
no problem. Additionally, as I was saying, the special use permit process requires that an approved use appear back before the TPZ for a further public hearing and review period not less than 2 years after the original issuance of the permit. The purpose of this look back hearing, as you know, is to report upon compliance with the conditions placed by TPZ and determine if further conditions should be imposed to address any operational or related technical concerns. That being said, TPC is not authorized to revoke a permit under this process. With the build-in restrictions and the existing special use permit process, staff believes that the ordinance as presented is consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development's goal to promote growth and retention of the new business opportunities, to strengthen the community's tax base in an innovative manner while preserving and protecting the residential character of surrounding neighborhoods. And directly utilizing the POCD strategy to revise zoning regulations through targeted modifications, providing innovative approaches to restrictions in order to support the current and future needs of the business community. And lastly, for the public record, you could see that on December 5th of 2022, the TPZ unanimously found the proposed ordinance to be consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development, and voted unanimously to recommend approval of the zoning ordinance to the Town Council this evening. And that concludes our brief presentation on tonight's ordinance, and happy to turn it back over to the council for any questions and/or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ledwith. Any questions or comments for the town manager? Anybody online who has a question or comment? Hearing none.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mayor, Ms. Fay.
Sure. Sorry, Ms. Mayor Cantor. I'm also going to tackle something at the same time. I think this is a good idea. First of all, we all know that brick and mortar retailing has changed dramatically, and we've got some big box spaces. And, you know, we could be a leader here. Some of these facilities that Mr. Ledwith just described are really leaders in other communities. So whether it's a Dave & Buster's or a bowling alley with exquisite food in cocktails, or take one entertainment, and we're already an entertainment mecca. So I support this. I think this is a great idea for new businesses and entrepreneurs. And it makes space. You can make use of space that we already have available. So thank you for the presentation, and I totally support this.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Any questions for the town manager? I'm just opening it up again. Okay. I want to read into the record, as Mr. Ledwith shared, the letter dated from TPC dated December 9th, 2022, recommending approval. We will look for a sign-up sheet to see if there are any public comments. Thank you. So first we have Karen Johnson. State your name and address for the record, and if you don't live in West Hartford or have a business in West Hartford, we can...
You go right up there, Karen, if you want.
Great.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Karen Johnson. I'm here tonight on behalf of Blueback Square Capital Partners. Charter Realty and Development is the managing partner for Blueback Square. We are responsible for managing, leasing, and redevelopment activities. First, I'd just like to thank the members of the council, and in particular, Mayor Cantor and the staff, because what we have asked for, we think is a reasonable request and a further continuation, as Mr. Ledwith noted, of the effort started in 2016. I noted in my letter, I thought it was from 2017. Obviously, with delays associated with COVID, we haven't been able to bring indoor recreation to Blueback Square yet, but based on all of our conversations with potential tenants, we did need a little bit more flexibility. So I appreciate the fact that the town staff and council has, I think, taken the time to continue this very important partnership with Blueback Square, which started many, many years ago as a public-private initiative, and this is the result of it. What we're looking at over the next few years, and we made a presentation to CPED and the councilors, and I submitted a letter for the record, which I'm not going to read verbatim, but it's essentially a summary of that presentation, and it talks about our strategy and how we would like to move forward at Blueback. And bringing an indoor recreation option is a very important part of that strategic vision that we have. And effectively what we're looking at is activation of the four corners around the square. And this further, I think, complements the types of activities that we've initiated since taking ownership a little over a year and a half ago in terms of activation, engaging with the community, et cetera. We do acknowledge, of course, that Blueback is home to many residents. 48, I always get this wrong, residents of the lofts, as well as another 60-something residents of the condominiums, Heritage condominiums. There was some concern expressed by members of the Heritage. We had an opportunity to meet and discuss that, last week. And I think they understand our vision, and I hope that they are here tonight to speak in favor of it. One of the concerns that they did raise, and I have discussed this with Mr. Ledwith, is the no limitation on that extra hour of operation in terms of day of the week. And I think our first initiative at drafting this ordinance did have a limitation on days of the week. If that's something that the council feels is appropriate, we know after our conversations with members of the Heritage that that would be something that they would be very supportive of, and in fact would be supportive of this proposal if there was a limitation on that. So I just wanted to add that in. I know there's other members of the Heritage certainly that may want to speak. Again, I'm here if there are any questions about what we're proposing. I don't want to take up a lot of your time with this holiday week. We're all eager to get home and get on with our lives. So again, appreciate you taking the time for us, moving this forward, and we look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next signed up, I have Arthur Spivak.
Arthur Spivak, 85 Memorial Road, West Hartford. I really want to thank the town government for doing items like this. I think it's great that you're watching the neighborhood and you have a concern as to what happens. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Next, I have Ed Basanis.
Hi, my name is Ed Bassanese, and I live at 85 Memorial Road, apartment 312 in the Heritage. And we've been residents of the Heritage since it opened in 2008, and I'm currently the president of the Heritage Association Board of Directors. So I also appreciate very much this forum and this opportunity to express our concerns. We just heard about this change a few days ago, and we didn't know any of the details, so we panicked and we imagined the worst. We could just picture whatever. It was pretty scary for us because all of a sudden we didn't know what was happening. So fortunately, Karen and the charter team reached out to us after we contacted our friend Leon, and they explained the situation to us, and so now we understand the issues, and I would say, again, kind of going on with what Karen says, we do have a concern about the Friday and Saturday being the only days to be open till 1. If Sunday through Thursday could be held to midnight, that would be very appreciated by us. We really have two big issues that are concerns to residents. The first is noise, and we're extremely thankful and supportive of the town and the council for the quiet time ordinance that you have set up and enforced, and that has made living in the center of West Hartford very nice because of the quiet time rules that you have. So we really appreciate that. Our other concern is late night boisterous crowds, and again, fearing the worst, we could picture crowds of people out smoking and talking and everything at 1:30 every morning, and until we knew the details, we freaked out. So with those issues now being addressed, I think I would say that I would support this amendment with the proviso that it extends only on Friday and Saturday if that is possible to do. And would like to thank our friend Leon and the council and the planning commission for your understanding and support, both on this issue and in keeping us informed for any other changes that may be coming to our neighborhood. We love living in West Hartford and the Blueback area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vicinisi. And then I have Bill Trumko.
Bill had to leave. I presented his views.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak publicly? Okay. With that, is there anybody from the council that would like to ask any follow-up questions? Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to get some clarification, Mr. Ludwig. So are we able to somehow amend this ordinance to meet the needs of the Heritage residents so that the entertainment would only be allowed Friday and Saturday evenings to 1 p.m. and Sunday through Thursdays to midnight?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll confirm that with Corporation Counsel Dodge before your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I was glad that Mr.
Sorry, Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I'm
Miss
sorry,
Miss
Madam-
Blanks, go ahead.
I just have a quick question or a point of clarification for Mr. Town Manager. With the hours that are going to 1 a.m., I know this is probably simple, but what time would the establishment begin to close down?
Thank you, Miss Blanks.
So they would be required to close, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councilor Blanks, they'd be required to close by 1 p.m. So I don't know, 1 a.m., sorry. So I don't know whether, there's any, we'd have to talk to, right now, there's no particular vendor that would be utilizing this particular ordinance at this time, but certainly we would work with them. They'd be required to close by 1 a.m. I'm not sure if that means flicking the lights on and off at 12:45, or we'd have to, we'd work through Charter Realty and with the particular vendor to ensure that the operation was in fact closed by 1 a.m.
Anything further, Miss Blanks?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Pullen.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Ledwith, I have a question around the minimum age of entry section. Would this section provide flexibility so that whatever the, what did you call it, eatertainment, dinnertainment?
Eatertainment and dinertainment.
Sure.
Yeah.
That they could choose to impose a minimum age of entry at certain times of day, but not the entire time. Is there flexibility allowed the way this is written?
So certainly there would be, yeah. So this would allow a particular applicant to request a special use permit to utilize this particular ordinance, and they could require an age requirement where it could be a minimum age of 21 to enter the establishment, or it could be, between the hours of noon and 8, it's all ages, or so it'll depend on the particular use of the space, and we would learn that through the special use permit application process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Pullen. Anything else? I do have one. So a use comes for an application for a special use permit, and then that business changes. They would need, a new business would have to go through the exact same process again to.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
They'd also be required to apply for an entertainment license as well. So in addition
Right.
to the special use permit.
Do you want to explain the entertainment license briefly?
So that I need Corporation Counsel Dodge's
Okay.
assistance with that. So it's done through the police
Police
chief and the
department.
police department. Certainly, we don't envision
My
an
cue.
issue. Oh. There he is. I just referred to you. The entertainment license, not to put you on the spot, but.
Is that a question?
So.
Well, we were referring to the entertainment license. If somebody is listening in, I wanted to just quickly summarize.
Through this ordinance change, an applicant would be required to submit a special use permit request through the TPZ in addition to applying for an entertainment license, which is issued through the police chief.
That's correct, Madam Mayor, and I believe that the reason for including that requirement was to give the town an additional enforcement mechanism in the event that we had any problems with somebody utilizing this ordinance. And so, under the entertainment ordinance, there are a number of enforcement steps that the police department can take, up to and including revocation of the entertainment license. And so if that license was revoked, then an applicant would not be able to continue conducting business in conformance with this ordinance.
Thank you. All right. Okay. One more round of any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we are adjourning the public hearing. And are you, Mr. Dodge, ready to go into the council meeting?
Yes, Madam Mayor, with one suggestion that when we do go into the council meeting, we would like, in order for Attorney Verano to be able to draft a amendment, as was discussed during the public hearing, we would just suggest taking up the Arapahoe item first.
So you want to switch A and B, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have to vote on that or no?
You can do it without objection, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Are there any objections to we are adjourned the public hearing and we are opening up the town council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. And we will start with the call to order and a roll call, Ms. LeBrow.
Ms. Blanks? Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Cortez?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Ms. Fay? Ms. Poland?
Here.
Mr. Sweeney? Here. Mr. Winograd?
Here.
And Mr. Zdanowitz?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBrow. So again, this is a special council meeting. We are required to stick to these items on the agenda, and they're just 2 items. So we will go with B. Mr. Sweeney.
Madam Mayor, without objection, I move that we move to item B.
Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, we are now moving on item B. Mr. Sweeney.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I move that the town council approve with conditions item, it'll be 1B, in an application of the Arapahoe Group LLC for changes of zone from RP, RO, and RMO to BC with Special Development District Designation for a mixed-use redevelopment along Arapahoe Road, LaSalle Road, and Farmington Avenue.
Sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. I just want to make sure for our colleagues on the WebEx that they are emailed the conditions so they can see them. Just want to make sure, okay? All right. So we will, this was just a little summary. This was subject to a public hearing on, I didn't write down the date, I should have, on the 13th, December 13th. And we had, I think, 4 to 5 hours, I think, of public hearing, a lot of input from our residents. And we are now, we had a formal presentation from the applicant and a lot of public input. And we received hundreds of emails, both supportive and both in opposition to the project for various reasons. But we now will, Mr. Dodge, do you want to go through the significance of the petition and summarize the conditions of approval?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Madam Mayor, first I'll address the protest petition, which was handed in at the public hearing. And as most of the members of the Town Council are aware, Madam Mayor, our town charter includes a provision that applies to zoning proposals, which triggers a supermajority requirement if a protest is filed at a public hearing signed by the owners of 20% or more of the area of lots within 500 feet in all directions of the property that is included in the proposed change. Indeed, here, as I mentioned earlier, during the public hearing, the town clerk did receive a petition protesting the application. As I mentioned at that time, verifying a protest petition requires a significant amount of work. The exact 500-foot area must be plotted out, and assuming that there's the requisite number of properties represented as having signed the petition, we are then required to verify the ownership of each parcel and whether it matches with the signatures that were submitted. This process takes some time, and I do want to thank Deputy Corporation Counsel Gina Verano, our paralegal Andrea Galino, Town Planner Todd Dumay, and the Town Clerk Essie Lebro for their assistance in reviewing this. Now, there are some additional requirements, Madam Mayor, that the council should be aware of when we look at signatures for a protest petition. First, the charter has us compare the total area for which validated signatures of owners were included to the total lot areas, excluding roads within 500 feet. This is not the total number of parcels, it's the total area. That is the denominator for determining the ultimate percentage that's required. Additionally, in order for a property to be counted, all owners of the property must sign the petition. As an example, if a husband and a wife own a property in co-tenancy, both the husband and the wife would need to sign the petition in order for that property to be counted as a protest for the purposes of the petition. And West Hartford does not accept electronic signatures. In this instance, Madam Mayor, there were a total of 27 lots within the 500-foot area that were represented as being signatories to the petition. And this includes properties, and I want to emphasize this, and this includes properties where we don't have signatures from both owners and where one or both of the owners may have signed electronically. So this likely includes both valid and invalid properties as part of that calculation. So our calculations revealed that even if all of those properties were considered as valid protests, only 18.4% of the lot area within 500 feet of the subject properties would be represented on the petition. As a result, it was unnecessary to proceed to the next step of the analysis, which would require us to verify whether all of the properties should be counted because the 20% clearly had not been met. So again, Madam Mayor, we had signatures from what appeared to be 18.4% of the properties within the lot area. That number is likely lower than what the actual percentage is. Now, I do want to note, however, that that's a legal requirement under our town charter. And it does bear noting that in the context of a land use application, a petition can serve two purposes. There's that legal requirement of whether it triggers the supermajority vote, but then there's also a political purpose as well, and that it may be used to simply express the views of the signatories with regard to the pending application. And here, the petition purports to include the signatures of more than 284 people who opposed the application, both inside and outside of the 500-foot buffer area. And the town council, Madam Mayor, is certainly entitled to consider that in your deliberations as you consider the application. So, Madam Mayor, if there are any questions on the petition, I'd be happy to answer them now. And I have passed around, Madam Mayor, a legal memorandum that briefly summarizes what I just discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. Any questions regarding the petition for Mr. Dodge? And that is the phone and people here. Ms. Fay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice too. Everybody's sick in my house. So I understand the legal ramifications of it, and of course the non-legal meritorious compliments of the petition. So this is not a supermajority vote, clearly, is what you're saying, Mr. Dodge. So it's just a normal council vote. Am I right to that conclusion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councilor Fay, the supermajority threshold was not met, and so in order to approve this application, it will require a simple majority of the town council.
Anything further, Ms. Fay? On the petition? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this memorandum is regarding the petition, not on the conditions of approval. So Mr. Dodge, you would like to summarize the conditions of approval? And these are being emailed to our colleagues on the phone.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I apologize, this is less than ideal. But, so we do not require a supermajority tonight, is that the right conclusion?
That is correct, Ms. Fay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we are going over the conditions of approval. Mr. Dodge.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I did ask Attorney Verano to make sure to email copies of the conditions of approval to the entire council. So I know we have Councilor Blanks and also Councilor Fay on the phone tonight. And so, and Winograd, I apologize. And so hopefully they've all received them and can review them electronically. But if they do not, please speak up and I'll make sure that we get those to you. So, Madam Mayor, before we get into the conditions of approval, I do want to take a moment to just address some of the findings that you are required to make. So this is an application for a change of zone in the establishment of a special development district under Section 177-4 of our ordinances. The purpose of a special development district is to permit and encourage variety and flexibility in land development by permitting changes and regular standards applied to permitted uses of land, provided the town council makes several findings. Hopefully, most of you are pretty familiar with these findings by now, but I know we do have one new councilor on the town council who may not be familiar with them, so I did just want to review the typical findings that you're required to make in order to approve a special development district. And those are that the proposed plan is in harmony with the overall objective of the comprehensive plan, that it is superior to a plan possible under the regular standards of our zoning code, and that it is in harmony with the actual or permitted development of adjacent properties. In addition to these findings, Madam Mayor, this particular application requires you to make additional findings due to the floor to area ratio of the proposed development. And this applicant is using a somewhat new provision of our ordinances, which was established in order to encourage infill development in West Hartford Center, provided that certain conditions are met. So, Madam Mayor, the floor to area ratio is the measurement of a building's floor area in relation to the size of the lot that the building is located on, and this is commonly known as the FAR. As I mentioned earlier, several years ago, the town council adopted an ordinance to encourage infill developments that will allow a far greater FAR for certain developments upon the town council making the following findings. And so in approving this application tonight, Madam Mayor, the town council will be required to find the following. A, that the development is of a contextually sensitive design and appropriate scale, taking into account the height and setback requirements of adjoining properties in more restrictive zones. B, that adequate parking exists to meet the demand of the existing and proposed development. C, that the development is in harmony with the open feeling and presence of natural light within the realm of the district. D, that adequate street capacity exists on adjacent streets to accommodate the traffic projected to result from any increased intensity to use above that allowed as of right. And E, that appropriate bicycle and pedestrian amenities such as but not limited to bicycle storage and or parking, benches, and pedestrian walkways are provided. So as I mentioned, Madam Mayor, here the applicant does require the additional FAR, and so in approving the application, you must make these findings as well as your standard findings for the for an SDD. I do want to note, however, it's not necessary for each individual councilor to walk through these findings. They can be discussed as you go throughout, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that in approving the application, you are finding that these conditions exist. As for the actual conditions, Madam Mayor, as I said, you all have in your possession a copy of the proposed conditions. And these are, Madam Mayor, your standard conditions, but as we typically do, we have suggested some additional conditions, and I will summarize those now. First, in section D7, we would allow the applicant to satisfy the off-street parking requirement by entering into a 20-year off-site parking agreement for not less than 40 spaces in Town Center Garage, and this agreement would need to be approved by my office and also filed on the land records. Second, Section D8 imposes certain restrictions on construction activities. These include a requirement that all construction-related parking be either parked on the site or in Town Center Garage, and that construction-related parking on Arapahoe and LaSalle would be strictly prohibited unless the parking is necessary for the construction work activities such as road improvements. We are also requiring that all construction-related traffic serving the site follow routes that will be designated by our Director of Community Development. Additionally, Madam Mayor, in order to assure that this is a complete project that is fully constructed, the conditions provide that no final certificate of occupancy shall be issued for Building A, which is the larger building, which is the larger, more profitable structure, unless the applicant has applied for a building permit for Building B, which is the smaller structure that would be on the corner. Also, Madam Mayor, I know that there was significant concern expressed at the public hearing regarding the traffic conditions in West Hartford Center. And so we are going to require the applicant to submit a lump sum payment to the town of $150,000 for off-site traffic calming improvements that will be implemented on Arapahoe Road and Wood Row. We had considered, Madam Mayor, being more prescriptive in making the and perhaps even making the applicant undertake these improvements. However, in consulting with our engineering department, we felt that it was best to provide the town with maximum flexibility in order to determine and install the traffic calming elements that would be most appropriate, especially in result of some of the current traffic studies that are occurring in West Hartford Center. And also, again, Madam Mayor, in order to ensure that these changes are made in time for the development to be built, we will require that no certificate of occupancy be issued until the traffic calming element improvements are completed. However, the town will be required to complete those improvements within 2 years, and I understand our engineering department is fairly confident that they will be able to do that. And finally, Madam Mayor, the creation of new public space is obviously important to this plan, and the conditions will require the applicant to provide a public space plan for review and approval by the town planner, which will permanently dedicate and reserve for the use by the general public areas of public space and enjoyment. And with that, Madam Mayor, that summarizes all of the additional conditions in addition to our standard conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have, and of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions as they may come up during the course of your debate.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. So the housing affordable plan is, we've done this a couple of times, but maybe you can just briefly go over that too, because it is relatively new for us as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting. I guess it's become standard for me, but it is a relatively new requirement. As provided for in the plans, Madam Mayor, in Section F, the applicant will be required to provide 4 residential rental units to be leased for 40 years as affordable at 80% of the area median income for the town of West Hartford as determined by HUD. Madam Mayor, this will also require, technically it's not a deed restriction because we're not actually transferring the property, but there will be a restrictive covenant that's required to be placed on the land records in order to record this affordability plan.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. Okay, questions for Mr. Dodge on the conditions? Anyone on the phone? Okay. If there are no questions on the conditions, then there can be discussion on the approval, subject to conditions. Did we make a motion subject to conditions yet? I don't think so. I think maybe we should move, Mr. Dodge.
Yes, it was part of the motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, just making sure. All right, so we can go to discussion, and because we have some people on the phone and it's a little hard to go back and forth, I'm going to start with Ms. Fay, if you can unmute and talk to this, and this would be the comments on the approval or disapproval of this project. Ms. Fay? You're up. Okay, I don't hear Ms. Fay, but I'm going to go to you, Ms. Blanks, if you don't mind starting thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Through you.
because this is a land use application, I just want to make sure that all councilors are part of the debate. So if we could wait until we get Councilor Fay back on the line.
Okay. Ms. Blanks, we're going to hold on you. Ms. Fay, we are waiting for you to just speak up on this application. We will text her. Hold on. Go to Ms. Blanks and then go back.
Madam Mayor, I do just want to make sure that all councilors are able to participate, which means not just speaking during the debate, but also hearing other councilors and their viewpoints. And so I would suggest waiting for now to see if we can get Councilor Fay back.
I see.
Perhaps we could take a brief recess to iron out any technical issues.
Okay, we will work on that right now, and if we need to recess, we'll let you know. Mary, can't hear you yet. Ms. Fay? Can she be on the phone?
Can she hear us?
Hey, Mary, I'm just going to put you on speaker on my phone.
Can she hear? And can you hear us? You'll have to stay on too to hear.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I can hear you. I said I pulled off to actually do this call so I wouldn't be interrupted. So I apologize. There's so many things I love about this project. I love the design. I love what you've accomplished. The rental property is gorgeous. It's a perfect spot for that. I love the condo idea because I actually want to find a way to sponsor more home ownership in town. And I think for the people who are downsizing, I think these are great alternatives. My hesitation, and honestly, I'm not really sure how I'm going to vote, to be honest, because I'm just going to spell out my hesitations. The fact that we had so many people take up a petition, there is neighborhood resistance to this, and I know change can be hard. I get all that, and I do wonder about the scale. It is a pretty large building, in the space that it's in, and I also have reservations about the parking because as much as we try to accommodate things and put people into other alternatives, they don't use that, and it ends up being parking on the street. Can you guys not hear?
We can hear
you.
you.
Hear me now?
Yep, we hear you.
Liam?
Yeah, you're on my phone.
Hold on. Oh man.
Mary, you're on the phone. You're good. Keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. this is not ideal, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be there in person. This is killer. So I'm really on the fence. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote, but I do have reservations and I do have concerns, and the people's voices were loud and clear. But we have to consider more than just folks' input. It's about what's the greater good of the town, and I think there's a lot of good in these proposals. But I am concerned about the size, and I am concerned about the parking. So I'm sorry that I'm a little ambiguous. I want to hear the rest of everybody's comments. It's a hard decision. It's a very big decision. It's one I've been thinking about for ages, and I do take it seriously. But the pros are there, and the cons are there. So I don't know. I know you can't do it. It doesn't make sense to reduce the scale of the building because of the economics. But we haven't figured out what our vision is yet for the center. So I just kind of feel like things are a little out of order in terms of the process. So that's what I'm struggling with more than anything.
Thank you, Mary. And so, Liz, as long as you can hear, we can continue. Thank you, Ms. Fay, I should say. Okay, then we'll go to Ms. Blanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So first off, I want to thank the applicant, led by Attorney Person, and the town staff for your hard work, the residents for coming out and participating in the process. Your passion for our community is certainly appreciated, and it underscores the commitment we all have to our town. So I'm thinking, and if my memory serves me correctly, for 20 years, this area has been vacant, and it's unused space. I've never observed the parking lot full. This, in my opinion, is an opportunity to grow our brand list. This development will benefit the community. It certainly will attract more young people because I continue to hear from young people about they want to live here and they want turnkey property, basically all new types of things. And they're the future of our town who want to actually move here as well as others. I really believe the window of opportunity is now. This development will also provide an option for those who want to downsize but remain in town, or for others who just want to fulfill another need for housing. These residents will have choices to use public transportation for health care, retail, or grocery services, or simply to use the Ankle Express. I know our town professionals and this council is committed to addressing the concerns of our nearby residents through listening and collaborating. And I know some of these discussions have already begun. I believe the applicants have really demonstrated through various meetings with town staff and presenting before this council that this process was truly a collaborative approach for a strong application. And I also believe the applicant has met the conditions that was just shared with us, as well as the additional conditions. And I'm excited, I really am, because it's the future of our town. And I think back when I was a young person and I visited the center, there was no blueback. And I just think all of these things are exciting. And we want to grow and improve our town. And this is the opportunity to do it. So I'm very excited to support it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. And we'll go to you, Mr. Winograd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to the applicants for their willingness to invest in their community. I also repeat the thanks to our residents for respectful and intelligent comments on both sides of this issue. We all share a love for the center. I like Ms. Fay mentioning her love for the project. We love the center and all it represents to our town. And that love could not be better represented than what we heard in the public hearing and the many written comments submitted to us. I support this proposal to add housing and residents to the center. The proposal, especially as modified over the months with the involvement of draft, essentially complies with the instructions we gave when we adopted 177-16.6. We created incentives for greater density by identifying what we wanted to see in a development. We wanted infill. We wanted density. We wanted affordable housing set-asides. We wanted structured parking. We wanted public spaces. And these are what the applicants have provided. I certainly understand and respect DRAC's concern over the density of the plan, but it meets the established FAR, and thus the objection really becomes a subjective aesthetic judgment. Simply put, I disagree with that view. I agree that transition is desirable, but I see these buildings, particularly the condos, as meeting that test. It is a residential building replacing a commercial parking lot, which, if anything, is a more appropriate transitional use between the core business areas and single-family homes. Obviously, a lot has been talked. The problems of Arapahoe and Woodrow are recent, largely created by the town's efforts to try to work on the LaSalle, 4 Mile, and Newport. It could be said the project is approved or not. This project will make things. I'm convinced that the applicant will be part of the solution. In part, as shown by their agreement to set aside funds for that purpose. At the hearing, one member of our community who lives nearby asked us to respect, quote, the rights of others to enjoy this lifestyle that we are so lucky to have. I share that sentiment and will vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. Okay. Would you like to go? Mr. Cortez.
I'll get started. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have mixed feelings with this, and I have notes in front of me, and they're all over the place because my feelings, what's going on in my head right now, it's all over the place. You know, the great thing we see is ownership, 58 units. That gives opportunities for homeowners in town who are getting ready to downsize and, you know, are probably empty nesters to buy units and make properties, make homes available for other people who would like to come in West Hartford. You know, so that's huge in itself. Safety aspect. We haven't spoken about safety. That alleyway that we're eliminating, you know, right now, which is not the safest spot at nighttime, you know, because we all know West Hartford during the day, but not all of us know West Hartford in the evening. And that alleyway is a little, you know, a little sketchy looking. I think this property, this development, you know, addresses that issue in a positive way. You know, I want to thank the neighbors, grassroots effort, you know, to come together and voice their opinion, whether, you know, for or against the project. But then the issue, what I struggle with is it appropriate to scale? You know, is this, you know, when you talk about real estate terms, you know, is this the best and final offer that they have? You know, they've come back before. Every project that's come before me has had a stamp of approval from DRAC. This is the first project that does not have the stamp of approval from DRAC. The report, I wish the report was a little more detailed from DRAC. You know, one of their suggestions was they wanted the property more to, you know, on the edge, and I kind of disagree with that. I love eliminating the big empty lot because I've been in that big empty lot, and it's not pretty back there. So it's nice to take up that space. And then the affordable housing, you know, we throw that a lot, and you know, I just want to, I just want to emphasize is affordable housing by definition, you know, so it's not, you know, it addresses one portion of affordable housing. There's only 4 units, you know, so we could do better there. But the ownership piece, that's really what drags me in. And when I go around debating in my head, and I have all these, you know, thoughts all over the place, you know, it brings me back to this big giant building. You know, and it is what they say, ginormous. It's this big, huge building back there, which is not to scale. I know, you know, I went to Hampshire House this today, and that thing is massive too. So you guys are not the biggest building in town, but in the area, it's this big, huge building that, you know, you might not see on LaSalle Road, but when you take a turn on Arapahoe, it's going to look out of place. You know, so again, is this the best and final that we have? You know, so I'm struggling with that because I come right to that piece. The ownership piece is huge, though. I mean, it diversifies the stock in West Hartford as far as housing. You know, we've been approving a lot of rental units, buildings in town. This is the first ownership that I've seen come through here in a while. I would love to see more of this, and again, just diversify our stock. But this is going to be difficult for me. I still don't know one way or another which way I'm leaning, and I'm not sure if all the check boxes were hit, as far as meeting the needs for us to vote on it, per what Corporation Counsel had stated earlier. So I'm struggling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Ms. Poulin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will start off by saying that I am going to support this project. I want to align myself with some of the other comments that have already been made about just how beautiful the buildings are going to be, the safety of the alleyways, and the thought that went into redesigning this project multiple times over the course. I think every step it's gotten a little bit better. We heard loud and clear from the residents about the traffic issues on the nearby streets. This is a problem that I think we have to solve together, and we have to solve it soon, regardless of what happens on Arapahoe and LaSalle. I'm not convinced that this project will exacerbate those existing traffic problems. We need to solve those traffic problems regardless. I'm excited about the opportunity to add housing to our town, and particularly this area. We know we have a shortage of housing in town. We have a lot of people who want to move here, and we want to make that opportunity available to all who can, whether there are people who wish to own or people who would rather rent at this time. And I'm particularly gratified to see that we are setting aside 16% of the apartments for affordable housing, which will provide more opportunities for people. I do want to also thank the residents who've come forward and participated in this process, whether you support or oppose it. All of the emails that got sent and the comments that were made at the public hearing, I took them very seriously. I know my fellow councilors did as well. And some people came forward with some great innovative ideas, and I'm hopeful to see that some of those will be implemented when we look at some of the traffic calming measures that might be coming down the pike. So with that said, and not to make this meeting overly lengthy, I want to just again thank the town staff, DRAC, TPZ, and the residents and my fellow councilors, as well as the applicant, for your thoughtful work on this, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Ms. Pullen. Mr. Zdanowitz.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to get it out of the way, I lost my voice. I'm not sick or getting sick. So my wife actually and kids love that. So, but their common theme, whether you're going to vote for this or against this or however you're going to vote, is that we thanked everyone, and I'm going to as well, that came out, because that really helps with our decision-making process. We really need to have that input. We can't make these decisions in a vacuum. And that goes for the presentation from the owners as well. We need the information in order to make decisions, and people came out. This is not my first controversial topic that I've had to vote for here in West Hartford, so I'm kind of used to that. But everyone coming out here is it's exceptional, and that means that you care, and that's why we're here too. So thank you. I think this is a natural progression for West Hartford. We need to grow our brand, as I heard someone else say. And it's not only grow our brand. What is our brand? Is it to stay stagnant? Is it supposed to stay everything what it looks like right now and that's it? Or do you have to grow your brand for the future? If you're picking out a kitchen for your home, are you doing it just for the next 2 years? Probably not. You're doing it for a long time, so you want to get it right. So I think this is a natural progression. And one of the speakers said, if you don't like change, you'll hate extinction. I wrote that down because I'll use that again. I'm going to steal it from him. And it really does make sense. I think there's a lot of people that said, if change in your own lives, you're like, oh, I didn't like that, but you got used to it, right? And I'll talk a little bit about it. I mentioned it last meeting, but the West Farms Mall I mentioned, it was supposed to be the death of the center, right? And it's not. It never was. But we were afraid of it back then. okay? And when Blueback Square went in, it went just the opposite. West Farms was against Blueback coming in. It would have been detrimental to their business. And they came here and opposed it. And a lot of people came and opposed Blueback Square. And I said this last week too, is that we had politicians come on horseback, come in and to represent and really make a statement. And really opposed it. And it was a big deal for West Hartford. And I would almost go out there and say to every single one that opposed it, who wouldn't want Blueback Square in their town? It's a great property, but you have to understand the evolution it went through. And we're the same thing again. I want to mention the Steel Road project. I didn't realize this, but 400 opposed it in over 3 nights. I would ask those same people if you went back there, and I drive that often. There's no traffic issues over there. There's not more traffic because of residential. And I'd ask, that project fits there perfectly, but there was a lot of opposition for it. I won't go on the other scale and comparisons, but it's an interesting, they talked about the buffer zones and things like that last week too. And I've driven around this property, I think more than I have done of any other issue in town here. I used to be on zoning board of appeals where you actually had to go to the property and review it and such. But I've probably, once we've got this and once I knew about this, I probably have been over there a dozen or more times, driving in the parking lot. I get out and I walk the parking lot. As Councilor said, that area at night, that is kind of sketchy. That back parking lot, think about it. Would I tell my 18-year-old daughter to go park in that parking lot to use the downtown area? No, I wouldn't, not at night, I would not. And not that I'm saying we're unsafe, it's just that as a dad, those are the kind of things. So, progress is gonna have to look at, he mentioned safety, my colleague. It would be a safer area there. These are owners. These owners of this place are gonna want this place to shine like they would any neighborhood that you walk around in West Hartford. If you own something, you take pride in it, and they will. We don't have anything like this right now, and I think it's an opportunity for us to go forward with. And there's a lot of traffic issues that were brought up last time. And not that I'm a traffic expert, I'm not, but after spending over a year on town council, we talk about traffic a lot. And residential homes really don't increase traffic. And I live on the other side of town off Mountain Road, and when the commercial businesses in Bloomfield get out, there's a tremendous amount of traffic there at 3:30, 4:30. What presents traffic? Schools getting out, restaurants, the Cigna, MetLife I talked about, the holidays, the mall, your parades, your marathons and things like that. Those are the kind of things that traffic. We have an issue here, and I think we have to solve it. Some other councilors talked about it. We do have to solve that. I had written previously is that I would almost like to see Arapahoe a one-way street. And, if there's any issues with the fire or police department, those emergency vehicles can literally go anywhere they want with their lights and siren. If they have to go down a one-way wrong street to get to someone to life savings, they can do that. So I don't understand the issue if it happens to be a police or fire issue, because under emergency, they have that option to do that. Again, one of the councilors mentioned that DRAC wanted to have it right on Arapahoe, because that's what community planning is, literally right on Arapahoe. And I don't agree with that either. I don't think that's it. You're going to drive around and you're not going to see this. And there is the buffer zone. And the plans on conservation and development says promote growth. I'm going to read each one of these. Promote growth. It does that. Retention of existing businesses. It's going to do that because the businesses spoke and they want the downtown area want the businesses for the people there for their business. The development of new business and opportunities. We see that on the corner there where there's going to be business at the bottom. And strengthening the community tax base, which it certainly does as too. in an innovative manner while preserving and protecting the residential character of the surrounding neighborhood. Well, as our legal counsel pointed out, is that you guys can't see this at home, but it is downtown West Hartford. It isn't. It happens to be a mix with the residential area there too, but it's there and it already exists. Those businesses that downtown on Farmington Avenue and LaSalle already exist, so it is in surrounding the neighborhood too, and it's going to be ownership for that neighborhood. So that's also part of that neighborhood, I think. I'm going to support this. I think it's great that we're going to have this particular area. It's going to be great for downtown. I would like to think that when the development, the planners here in West Hartford, when they look at the future, and I know we're looking at the traffic pattern in West Hartford, I think it's important, I want to say this on record, that we need to open LaSalle up both ways, some down in the future. It's not a conditional for this, but that's what I think it would be part of. And then I think we need to keep the diagonal parking and not widening the sidewalks. Like if we're talking about maybe widening the sidewalks on LaSalle, and I'm wondering and they bring the restaurants outside, which is great. We all saw that during the pandemic. It was after the pandemic hit, people moved outside. That takes away revenue from us in town because you're taking parking spaces away. And what are you doing for the other businesses? If you're going to open for outdoor dining, what are you doing for Becker Jewelers and the other places for making it wider? You're not treating all the businesses downtown the same. So I think that we need to go the two-way parking diagonal and potentially maybe make Arapahoe one-way. But I do support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zdanowitz. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I too would like to thank the residents and the applicant for their input. I would like to especially thank the residents in opposition for presenting the first alternative presentation that I've been a part of. That was both insightful and obviously took a lot of time and preparation, and appreciated the perspective and the time that went into that. Also would like to thank the applicant for the time that they've spent on this. I know this has been a long road, and that will be kind of one of the points that I'd like to make here tonight. Is I stumbled upon a quote the other day that really kind of stuck to me about the town, and we've been talking about a lot of what we're doing in town is kind of doubling down on investments that we've made over time. And it was a quote, it was about sports, but it was good players practice until they get it right. Great players practice until they never get it wrong. And what made me think about that is kind of the way we've been approaching our development in town and the way we've been investing our ARPA money, and we've been really investing in putting our thoughts onto things that we are already doing really well. How do we continue to grow them? And what I think that this development does is exactly that. It focuses on what is one of our shining places, West Hartford Center. And I've been talking about this, pretty much since I've been on the council. There is no other place in the state of Connecticut that has developers knocking on the door to come here. I would put us up against pretty much any other municipality in the entire state, and we need to take advantage of that opportunity when it comes. And how does that relate to this applicant? This applicant has been before the town for a long time, and the application has not been right every time it's come here. And in fact, that's what makes, I think, West Hartford so great, is that this application came before us multiple times, and the town staff worked with them, and multiple times it was not right, and the timing wasn't right. And that goes back to the quote that I'm saying, and I'm kind of referring to West Hartford as being a great community. We practice and practice until we don't get things wrong. And I think that that's what we are seeing here tonight. Is this a perfect application? By no means. I don't think those things exist. But I think that there has been a lot of work that went into to get to where we are. And obviously there are significant concerns about traffic in town, and because it's a public safety matter. And what I appreciate about what is before us tonight is that the applicant is willing to put their money where their mouth is, to put additional money on the ground for public safety improvements that I think were very well laid out by the residents. I think that tonight, I think we have a pretty good move forward. This is the largest amount of money that I've seen from an applicant to invest in the town on public safety. And I appreciate the town staff working for it. I appreciate the mayor being pretty forceful on that because it is an issue. We're seeing it all over town. But most importantly, what I would also like to say is, traffic is caused by people. And right now we have a really great thing where we have a lot of people that want to live here. And in order for us to continue to have people wanting to live here, we have to continue to practice until we don't get it wrong. And I think what we see here tonight is not a perfect application, but I do think that we are doing something with a space that has been unused. And I think we are doubling down on a area in town that really will continue to make us grow as a community and continue to have us shine. So with that, Madam Mayor, I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, rest up here. Before I was on the council, I was on TP&Z, 3 years as chair. So whenever an application comes in that revolves around zoning, I get excited. I like to look at all the details, and I like to make certain that the applicant checks all the boxes. And I think that's really, really important. I think process is very important. I think that we can say things look nice, we can say this is something we need, or things of that nature. But there's rules and there's regulations as to how things have to happen. So I just want to go back a few years when we were talking about increased density. And there were some proposals that were before us. And there was a very educated group of residents who came forward, very thoughtful, who spent many, many hours in a working group to develop standards for parcels in the BC zone. They were realistic that there were opportunities for redevelopment in the area, but they wanted to make certain that when those opportunities presented themselves, the applicants checked the boxes. A lot's happened over the last almost a decade since that happened. And I have basically the utmost respect for all those people who participated in that process. Many of them appeared before us last week. And as I often said as chair of the zoning board, one thing that West Hartford gets right is that its citizens are respectful of different opinions and that they listen to them and they try to find a way to seek common ground. And we heard, I don't know, in excess of 30-something people last week. I think there was a lot of common ground there. Even though it may have not appeared on the surface that way. I did take steps speaking to staff to see if we could foster the relationships and find solutions that would be in the best interests of both parties. Spoke to the manager, spoke to the planner. I thought that was important. So I'll just get to the heart of the thing here. A lot of the neighborhood opposition deals with quality of life in their neighborhood. And a lot of it that we heard was how many more cars are going to come down Woodrow? How many more cars are going to come down Arapahoe? And what solutions can you find? I explored with town staff the option of closing off Arapahoe to prevent more traffic from going there. I was told from public safety point of view that was not something we could do, and from engineering, it really wasn't something that was feasible because we don't control the parcels necessary to make a roundabout or a turnaround at the end. Okay, so that didn't stop me. At the hearing, I inquired as to whether or not we could ask the applicant to require their residents or tenants to make left-hand turns, which is an unusual request. We usually want people to make right turns because left turns can be dangerous. And they said that they would work with us to encourage people to make left turns out of the condo driveway as well as the Webster Bank parking lot, which is going to have the building, I think that's Building B. And they've noted that I've heard that they'd be willing to put up signage to that point to make that occur. And I know as early as, or as late as this past week, staff and members of the people who presented, I thought, was a very sincere objection to what had been proposed. Had some very good discussions with respect to ways to address those quality of life concerns revolving around traffic. One person testified that traffic goes 65 miles an hour down their street. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable in this neighborhood. It's unacceptable in any neighborhood in West Hartford. We really need to, as I just said, our residents are respectful. They need to be a little bit more respectful when they're going through people's neighborhoods, okay? Even though you may not live there, you need to show those people the same respect that you would expect at your residence. So I think that's important. During the hearing, there was some discussion, and the applicant admitted that they did not get a positive referral from DRAC. And I would note for the record, this is probably one of the first times that I've seen an application make it this far that had not received that. So I wanted to get more information as to why that was the case. So I have to keep in perspective, because I've been dealing with DRAC and TPZ for a very long time, that DRAC stands for Design Review Advisory Commission. So they're advisory. They review the design standards. And you have to point out that they don't govern land use. And in my opinion, having read some of the record there, I think that they may have overstepped their boundary in the review of the application with respect to, it's not really within their jurisdiction. So the things that they did work with the applicant in terms of reducing the mass of the building was appropriate, but they're not responsible for deciding where this building should be located on that particular parcel. And I also heard that during the last and final meeting with DRAC that several of the members thought that they could be persuaded to grant an approval. But that did not happen or transpire at that meeting. With respect to the TP&Z, 4 out of 5 members thought that it should be approved, that it does fit in with the POCD. The chairman thought otherwise. I've been chairman, and I sometimes thought otherwise too. I don't give any more credence to someone being chairman than any other member, but I do listen to what is said, and I think that's really, really important. With respect to this application, and I said this during the public hearing, I find that outreach is a very important element during the process of any application. It doesn't persuade me one way or the other. What it does for me is reaffirm that the applicant has done everything necessary to educate those abutters whose life could change. And you may not change their opinions, but let them know what's happening. That's the worst failing of government or government processes, is not to know what's happening. I would say, I'm sorry to say that the applicant tried. I've seen better efforts. But I can't come to the conclusion that the neighborhood was unaware of this project or was unaware of what was being proposed. So I think in the end, I'll accept the outreach for what it is. Could it have been better? In my opinion, I think it could have been better. One of the things that the Corporation Council said this evening was that a certificate of occupancy would not be granted for the condo building until a building permit is pulled for the apartment building. I think that's very, very important. We don't want to be in a situation where 50% of the project gets built on the promise that the other 50 might be built. So for me, that is very, very significant that the applicant knows up front that you want to have people live in this condo building. You've also got to be serious about building the other. And I think what the council, when we saw these plans, the parking lot that's now used by Webster Bank is the last piece on Arapahoe and on LaSalle in that corner that sort of wraps it up and finishes that corner. That's not an empty parking lot. And I think what the council envisioned was a building. And that building, as was demonstrated, is to scale. It does have affordable units in it. It's a little different on the parking arrangement, but as a father of two, I guess what you call them, millennials now, or generation somethings, they don't even have cars anymore, so parking's not a big thing to them. So I get it. For me, that would be important. If I can't have a parking space in my apartment building, I'm not renting here. But things are different, so I think that's very important. So then we come down to looking at this whole thing in total. So I put my zoning hat on right now, and I say, well, one of the first findings we have to have is whether or not we ought to approve a zone change from these various zones to an SDD. And we have to make certain findings. And the Corporation Council enumerated what those findings were in order to do this. And I would concur that this particular application meets those findings meets those conditions that those findings have been satisfied. And so they've checked that box and been able to jump that hurdle. Okay, so we keep the hat on and we now look at the FAR requirements. And this is where it gets something that's important. And the reason I like to talk about it this way and methodically is I think it's important to get on the record the reasons why the council would decide an application based on all the evidence that was either presented in the record or through testimony. So in 2017, we adopted regulations allowing for alteration of standards in the BC zone. And more specifically in 177-16-6B, we talk about appropriate development in the BC zone. And this now has gone back years, 2017, so that's at least 5 years. And I think it even started before then with the implementation of the work of that very productive working group on ways for the town center to experience incremental growth. And I don't think it's any shock to anybody that over the years, what can we do to increase the vitality of our center to make it still the destination that we want it to be. And that came up through a variety of other zoning ordinances and then was adopted into the plan of conservation and development. And that took a while to get developed. And then I also think we need to throw in the fact that we had a pandemic. And this pandemic was very unkind to many elements of our center. Restaurants were struggling. There was uncertainty as to what they would look like, whether or not people would be able to dine indoors ever again. We took the necessary steps to do whatever we could to bolster outdoor dining and make it easier for takeout. You saw the expanded dining corrals, you saw things of that nature. But there were other segments in that, in our center that weren't so lucky. We saw retailers who were deemed non-essential, who had to be closed for 90 days, who basically said, I don't know how I'm going to survive. And prior to that, we've noticed a transformation in the spaces that are used in the center. One can just go back in recent memory and think of West Hartford Center as a place where we had a lot of unique shops and boutiques, and where people can reminisce about going with their parents or relatives shopping for a variety of items. In those spaces today, we'll see professional offices such as real estate. We'll see a lot more financial institutions. We'll see medical services on traditional first floor retail spaces. And as a small business retailer, brick and mortar person, it's a struggle, and it's something that is a challenge. So what can the town do to promote economic vitality? And we're at that juncture where there needs to be more feet on the street. There needs to be more customer base. And how do you do that? You can do that by increasing people calling the center home. And we've seen on the periphery with the Byline and with the Children's Museum properties, 2 apartment complexes coming in close proximity. This one is actually located right in the BC zone, right there. And it was interesting that it was described as some type of, I don't know, some heat, thermal, something, unused parking lot. I can't remember the terminology. I thought it was a unique terminology for describing this parking lot. And I would agree with Councilor Zanowitz. I visited a number of times, and usually there was no one ever parking there. It was totally underutilized. So I think that's important. And I also think what's important is the person or the developer is not really a stranger to the center. It's not somebody who didn't have property rights already in the center. They owned this parking lot. They owned the Webster Bank building. I don't think it was a secret that they purchased 2 homes that were home businesses on Arapahoe. That was not a secret to anybody. So none of this is basically a surprise. I think that's important to point out as well. So back when we had a whole discussion about some application, and we were talking about FAR, and it didn't go well for the applicant, but they knew that if they wanted to do something, they would have to find something that made it work. Now, the floor area ratio for the district can be no greater than 1.25. And through their application, they have come up with a floor area ratio of 1.24. And they were able to acquire bonus density points or set-offs, I guess, with respect to floor area ratio for 3 reasons. The creation of some new public spaces that were illustrated during their presentation, an infill development, and the private parking garage. And I would say that and the parking garage is going to be below grade with architectural screening. and checking with the manager, and I thought I was pretty right on. It's about $40,000 a space to put a parking space underneath. So this is not something that's not significant. So I'm looking at, do they meet the requirements under floor area ratio? And once again, putting the zoning cap on, they check all the boxes. So 177-16-6B2 says if you check all the boxes, then the council, and we find that, then the council can authorize its approval. So that's where I am right now. So they met the requirements, and they provided the testimony and the evidence for the zone change. They met the requirements for the FAR. So where does that bring me? What it brings me to is, I don't like sitting here where things are contested or controversial or things of that nature. I like to find ways to resolve differences. And I've been told, and by town staff who have worked very, very diligently, many hours on this, from the town manager's office, town planner, town engineering, corporation counsel's office, that the applicant is committed to working with the neighborhood to keep the traffic off Woodrow and Arapahoe. And I can't say that any clearer, so I'll say it again. The developer has expressed their consent to keep the traffic off of Woodrow and Arapahoe, and will work with the town to find reasonable solutions that do not interrupt or disrupt the quality of life of the people who reside on those streets. And also I'd like to, Madam Mayor, if I could, just finish up with two other things.
Okay. I am a little afraid I'm going to lose Mary, so.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The construction phasing and the construction path, this is not a project that's going to be done, Madam Mayor, in 2 months. I probably anticipate at least almost 2 years. And it's going to be disruption to people's everyday life. And that goes through the back of my mind. But it needs to be done in a respectful way, and the developer needs to follow these guidelines with respect to construction time, with respect to travel of equipment, of making certain that they do what the town says with respect to the construction. It's only fair. You need to be a good neighbor. You were a neighbor before in a different way. Now you want to be a neighbor with respect to this project. It's incumbent upon you to demonstrate that you will make all good faith efforts to do that. And then the last thing, Madam Mayor, under the condition of approval, the public space plan. And that would need to be filed on the town records and reviewed by the Office of Corporation Counsel. And that's something that we were looking for with any type of development that wanted to take advantage of the FAR. But I don't take any of these conditions of approval as just something that is just drafted on this piece of paper. This basically becomes, in my opinion, a living document, an agreement with the town, and we as the representatives of the people of the town, their agents, to make certain that the developer complies. And lastly, I'll say I'd want to thank the developer for bringing a proposal forward. As been said before, it's important that people invest in our community. And I don't believe that this will be the last investment in this particular neighborhood in the very near future. But I think for the record, so that other applicants know, you need to engage with the neighbors, you need to listen to them, you need to give them respect, and you need to demonstrate good faith in the things that you promise. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. I do, Ms. Fay is in traveling and in a tender area, you know, and I do want to respect that, although I do have things I have to say. I'll try to touch on them first. I want to thank my colleagues for their thoughtful input, and they really do, their commitment to making sure that they take all of the pieces of this development into account. I can't talk with this, sorry. That they really need to, that they really have been considering and thinking and understanding, reading every email. And so I thank you for that. I want to thank the applicant for their investment in the community previously and this proposal to invest further in our community. I want to take the incredible commitment of town staff. This has been a very, very long process. Much has gone into this, and I think Mr. Davidoff mentioned it's been about an 8-year road to have this plan before us today. For our vote. Our incredible volunteers of DRAC TPZ, tremendous hours of input. But I really, really want to thank the residents and their commitment to the community and their care for their passion for their homes and their community and for this beautiful center that we all so adore. We really, truly have extraordinary residents that go the extra mile, that really put in the thought. They talk to each other. It bonds communities together. I have seen long-time friendships come out of things that might be somewhat controversial at a time, and then that journey of seeing people kind of seeing something happen and having it come to fruition. All of your perspectives make us better. It challenges us to take action and to make sure that we are listening and keeping us accountable. We heard about the traffic. We know that is a problem. It is something that we put things in motion to help fix, whether it was the master plan or traffic calming measures that we have done on other streets to try to fix those problems. It is like water. Things shifted a bit, and we have to address it. So we will. And what I saw through this process and the resident and the developer is that, and the investors, that they are willing to be partners in that, solving that process. They recognize it too. I do agree with Mr. Davidoff. If there was one real, I think, deficiency in this application, it was the community outreach. And I hope that is not something that happens again. I think it's something that is the most important thing, actually. You might not always hear what you want to hear, but you need to take it to account, and you will become a better partner and neighbor if you listen to the residents that are around a development. I do believe that this development will not add to the problems of traffic. I think it will not add cars as much as it will add people. And people are investing in this area to walk. That's what they want to do. So I think that's really important. DRAC mentioned that this is a strong design. I think some of the suggestions that DRAC made were things that gave me pause. Again, bringing things to Arapahoe, to the road, that was something that I really struggled with. So I found this to be unfortunate that we did not, that DRAC did not come with a full approval. They have different things that they have to consider. We have economic considerations that we understand because of a structured parking investment that the developer has to make. How dense a property needs to be to get the returns to finance that structured parking and get the returns they need to have a successful project. So that is something DRAC doesn't need to consider. We do need to consider that. So thinking about, could it be scaled back? Could it be different after the rescaled project? And I don't think it can be. I think if it did go back again, it wouldn't have changed substantially in any way. So I think this is, again, they mentioned this is a strong design, it has just strong design elements, meaningful public improvements, and high-quality materials, and that's something that we really want. Again, home ownership is not something that we have seen, and I do believe that people living in condos and apartments are residents of a neighborhood, and they will make it better. They will prioritize public safety and the quality of life in the homes as they are the neighbors that are neighbors and residents of this neighborhood. As mentioned before, the center needs residents. They need foot traffic to make sure that it's not just one kind of retail. Maybe, we do have a lot of restaurants. Those restaurants have been through tremendous challenges, and they do need traffic on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. But there are also a lot of other businesses. People will say to me sometimes, why aren't there other retailers that... Retailers have tremendous headwinds coming at them, online commerce being one of the biggest, and then you have workforce and supply chain all coming into really challenging our center. I hear this from business owners all the time, and this is something that I think will help to bring residents that live in this neighborhood to support those businesses. We do have to reinvent ourselves, and that is from, again, what my colleague said, the mall, outdoor dining, all the journeys that we've taken along the way. I think what West Hartford has done is never sat back and said, we're good where we are, because, I'm a runner, and I've always said, if you stay still, you lose the race. We want West Hartford to be the best community in the state and one of the best in the countries, and we are. And if we stay still, we won't remain there. I am convinced of that. I think what this development does is treasure and support the authentic classic buildings that are there, and respects building behind a glass 60s building. That might not be my favorite, but it is behind that building. And so going on a LaSalle, it is largely kind of camouflaged behind that building. The Arapahoe piece has significant screening, and I do think that from all the angles, you will not see this tremendous building. That will not be what people are seeing. What they will see is investment in a community that really cares about the authenticity of its neighborhood and cares about the businesses understanding that they need to have people living there, and understanding that expanding this West Hartford is having more people live in the most desirable place in town is really important. We also heard from realtors, and Realtor.com published a list of the top housing markets for 2023. Metro Hartford, West Hartford, East Hartford was ranked first nationally. That means they expect 15% in growth numbers in this region. And there were other references just purely to West Hartford. They state that over the last 3 years, supply of homes and vacancy rates dropped to record lows, coupled with Americans living longer, fewer properties, favorable borrowing conditions, all drove prices to a new high. So not only do we have supply-demand issues, but we have prices that are high. So people are moving from high-priced metropolitan areas to mid-sized communities that are economically strong. And that's what West Hartford is. And so, we are among El Paso, Louisville, Chattanooga that offer affordable homes for a median income. It might not seem it at times, but we are that. From people that are moving from Boston and New York, they really do seize on that West Hartford model, and they really want to be here. Our inventory right now is currently less than 40 homes for sale in the entire town, and typically it would be closer to 200. We know that long-term ownership there's a shortage of it, and what will happen is, I think, that empty nest, that people move from their homes to potentially a walkable condo, that will free up some homes in that process. We also know that density is environmentally sound. It's a good investment in the environment because it uses up less of a footprint. There was an analysis, I think, by United Way on the impact on the carbon footprint of single-family homes and multifamily homes, and that carbon footprint is much less on multifamily homes. we've had success. We know we've had success with multifamily homes or even senior housing near or next to or part of residential, single-family residence, whether that's Chatfield, Hamilton Heights, St. Mary's. The Dalamar is a little different model, but even the Dalamar, the Packard, and of course our own Blueback Square. So Blueback led to further investment, and we know and we feel that this investment will also lead to further investment in our center and our town. Times and conditions change so rapidly that we must keep our aim on the future, and that is what I think this project does. So again, I want to thank my colleagues for all of their input and all the people that I thanked before, but mostly to the residents that come out and make us better every day. With that, we can go to a roll call vote. Ms. LeBreau on this, and
Ms. Blanks?
Yes.
Ms. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Cortez?
Yes.
And Mr. Davidoff?
Yes.
Ms. Fay?
No.
Ms. Poland?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Winograd?
Yes.
And Mr. Zdanowitz?
Yes.
That is 8 yes and 1 no.
thank you very much, and congratulations to the applicant. And again, we know that traffic is going to be much, much better in this area by positive changes. And we will now go to A, Mr. Sweeney.
Madam Mayor, I move adoption of an ordinance permitting certain indoor venues in the CBDH district to stay open until 1 a.m. and operate under a Café Liquor Permit with age restriction.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. This is for discussion as well. Ms. Fay, would you like to start?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Dodge. Sorry, one second. Mr. Dodge wants just, one second, Mary.
Hold on, Mary, 1 second.
Madam Mayor, I know that during the public hearing, there was a amendment to this discussed to make the new expanded hours only on Friday and Saturday night. That may seem like a simple amendment, but with land use, nothing is ever simple to draft. And so with your indulgence, Madam Mayor, I would request just a 10-minute recess so that my office can get that drafted and make sure it's correct. This is a zoning ordinance, so we don't want to sort of do this on the fly. But if we could have a brief recess to get that amendment drafted, I think we would have it ready for the council shortly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dodge.
Judge,
Mr.
we
Sweeney.
have to reintroduce the ordinance with the conditions. Well, we have to state that it's the resolution with the conditions. Because I just made the motion as the ordinance is, not with the condition.
No, so Madam Mayor, the motion, because the ordinance has already been read in, would be, the motion would be for adoption. And so that is currently on the table. Once we have the amendment, I will suggest that the deputy mayor make a motion to amend the ordinance. That will be considered, and then the town council will vote on the ordinance as amended. But if we could just have a brief period to get the ordinance drafted, make sure that's technically correct, I think we'll have that ready for you shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge.
So we don't have to take a break, though, because we can still discuss the original, right? And then discuss that, so we don't need a break.
Is that okay? Can we do that?
That's fine, as long as you, if I could take a recess, and then if you promise to wait for me, then I think that would be fine, Madam
We will not vote without the
Mayor.
condition. Yes,
Thank
thank you. Okay, so I think we can discuss. Ms. Fay.
I like the idea of having more entertainment venues because, as I totally got, it's hard being remote, as you know. I got my signals crossed, and I was telling my rationale at the hearing, but we have a lot of retail space, and they're beautiful, and they're gorgeous, and we should use them. And people want things to do in the center in Blueback. They want to be out there. I take Katie out there all the time. She wants to do things. She wants to go to the clay pen, and she wants to. So I think the more entertainment things that we can have that are family oriented, where people can go out. And I'm
I've traveled a lot. I've gone to Dave & Buster's in Dallas, and in fact, we're probably going to go there in Arkansas over the holidays. They're great family fun, and they're wonderful spaces. And I think we have to manage this transition from brick and mortar to online in an efficient manner. We've got the spaces. It makes sense. People want them. Look at how we've got those discovery places or the axe throwing. They want entertainment. So I'm fully supportive of this as long as we've got the special conditions in place so that we don't waken our neighbors. I think this is a great thing for our town.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Ms. Blanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. And I would echo some of what Councilor Fay just said. I think this is a great idea on the venue that's being proposed. There isn't a lot of things in town for family to do together. We have the ice skating rink for the young people, and I know when my girls were younger, that's where they went, or they just kind of hung out around the movie theater in that little gathering space around Blueback. We have tons of restaurants, and I think we all, as family and friends, especially around the holiday time, when our family members or close friends come into town, we would like to do something with them together rather than traveling an hour away to the casino. So I think this is a welcome entertainment spot being proposed. I would support it. My only question is, I know a number of neighbors have perhaps raised this with noise, and I know sometimes that can be an issue, especially in the warmer months. If it's closing at 1, I know most clubs begin that last call like maybe a half an hour before or 15 minutes before, so that all of the customers are actually out of the building by that time. But other than that, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Mr. Winograd?
Thank you. I just want to agree with what's said before. I think it's a very good plan, and I wish whatever in the business luck. And I also want to thank both staff and Blueback for the cooperation with getting this to us tonight. I know it was a little bit of a tough road. There was some miscommunication. There were some just delays that really were nobody's fault. But I'm glad we were able to work together. Blueback is an incredible corporate citizen of our town. We all wanted to do well, and I'm just very glad that we were able to work this out and come up with a good solution. So I will be supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. We will go to Mr. Cortez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo what my other colleagues have said prior. This is a great idea. Blueback has been in the works for about 20 years now, and it's been changing, evolving, and things haven't been perfect. We have empty spaces, but I think that this amendment is going to help it become perfect, become better, and that's what we need, and kind of make that a gem like our center is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Ms. Pallone?
Thank you. I know Mr. Dodge is hoping that we'll talk for a long time on this so that he can have some time. But I honestly don't have that much to say. This seems like a very simple change. We haven't been presented with the precise business and the precise minimum age requirements at this time. My only concern would be the lack of access. If the existing space does not have a minimum age requirement, which it doesn't, because we don't have that anywhere, then people are able to use the restrooms in that facility, and I would just worry about the loss of access to restrooms for the public. But other than that, until we know more, this seems like a simple change, and I will support it.
Thank you, Ms. Pullen. Mr. Zadanovich, would you like to go?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I support this. I think it's a great idea. I echo my colleagues' input, so not to take up any time to repeat some of the same things, I just want to let everyone know I would support support it.
Thank you, Mr. Satanowitz. Mr. Sweeney? Oh, actually, Mr. Davidoff, you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll continue talking until Mr. Dodge gets back because what,
Mr. Sweeney, you go.
because what I really want to say is about what Mr. Dodge is going to bring us back. No, Madam Mayor, that's one point. But the other thing is, I do remember when it came, this proposal came to CPED, and it really wasn't ready for prime time. And then we met upstairs and we talked to the parties from Blueback and had a good discussion as to what they were thinking, what investments they were willing to make in the district. I think it's important to note that since they've taken ownership, over $10 million worth of investments has been made in the parcel. And I think it's also important to note that Mayor Cantor and I were around when Blueback was a concept, and Mayor Cantor voted on it as a member of the council. I voted on it as a member of the zoning board. I think it's proven to be a vital part of our community. While there were people who still may disagree, I respectfully disagree with them. I think it was a game changer, and I'm proud to have voted to support it. I'm also a realist in the sense that our economy is changing and the expectations of our residents are changing, and what they would like to see in our various business districts to be the thing to do, okay, or the place to eat, or the place to shop, it is constantly revolving. And I think I've said many times that a community that's able to identify those and to adapt will be successful. I am really glad to hear this evening that my good friends over at the Heritage, which I did have an opportunity one campaign season to speak with them about, the role of being on the town council, felt comfortable enough to reach out to me saying, whoa, what's happening here? Because I didn't really know about it. And as I just spoke on the last application about outreach, I can't say this any stronger. We need to do significant outreach to our residents. They should not be looked at as opponents. They shouldn't be looked at as foes. They should be looked at as partners, as people in a relationship. That if you're going to be in their neighborhood, you want to do right by them. And the way to do right by people is to educate them. They may not agree with what your proposal is, but the respectful thing to do is to tell them what are your changes and how this may or may not affect their quality of life, because they're already there. So I really thank my friends over at the Heritage for pointing this out. I immediately sent it to the mayor, who asked me also to forward it to the manager. And as was witnessed and evidenced, there was outreach to the people that needed to be heard. It's not inexpensive to live at the Heritage. Last time I looked, property values have held their own or have increased, probably to the detriment paying more taxes. But I think that this process has shown that we expect, as a decision-making body, that you will do the necessary outreach to give people an opportunity to be heard and to be listened to. Whether or not you agree with what they have to say, that's a different story. But should anyone not be given that opportunity, then for me it's always going to be an easy no, because that is the fundamental concept in our democracy is due process and the right to be heard. So I will, when we get to the amendment, Madam Mayor, I'm very happy to support that, because there is agreement between Blueback and the residents with respect to limiting the hours to 1 a.m. in the morning, just 2 days a week, and closing by midnight. I think that's reasonable, okay? And I've come a long way in my tenure here as somebody who's not so involved with all this drinking activity that people engage in, okay? I think there's a lot of other ways to enjoy life other than constantly getting a cocktail. But for some people, I guess that's a necessary part of going out and having some fun. So No, I think that this will be transformative. I hope that the applicant is successful, because if they're successful, we're successful. So that's it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I like Mr. Davidoff, really appreciated the folks from Charter really making the presentation now over a months ago. I'm losing track of time. But I thought it was a really great opportunity for us to understand the investment that they have made, the investment they're going to make, and the vision they have for this property, and how it fits into the town's future. We had a great back and forth. I questioned whether or not we needed to have an age restriction, as someone who thought it would be great to have a nice little putt-putt for, or potential opportunities for vendors to come in there with young kids and be able to come in there. But I appreciated Councilwoman Poland's questions about potentially, however the applicant may want to use that, and that's a great thing to have on the table. So, I encourage, whatever goes on in there to really be open to the community that we've talked about so much over this time, of being kind of some of which that are of a generation that's very close to my own age. I have 3 young kids. I would love a place to go with them to entertain them and be able to enjoy. Sorry, Mr. David, if some people do like to have a beverage while entertaining. But that is something that we would obviously look at. But no, again, it just goes back to the theme that I think the mayor's talked about, that I've talked about, is this is a major real estate company that is looking to make a significant investment in our town. And again, we are in limited space. There are other municipalities across the state that this is being asked of. And for that reason, this is a public-private partnership where we ask Blueback to run a top-notch real estate investment property, and we need to work with them to allow them to do what they do. That is not what we do at the town. We do not run businesses. We do not attract tenants. But we also, our job is to listen to the residents. So I appreciate the residents reaching out. I appreciate Charter for having that conversation. And I look forward to seeing what is next there. I do echo the idea, though, that whatever does go in there, that we keep it in harmony with what we traditionally expect in that center, with the idea of young families being there quite a bit, and at some point figuring out maybe some sort of public restroom or some availability, so that we can deal with that need that I think that has been accommodated for by current tenants right now that may or may not be with us forever. But again, very excited, and again, thank you for Charter for the investment in the town. I think I'm trying to stall for Mr. Dodge any further. Yeah. I guess I can pass the torch to to the mayor, but again, thank you for your investment.
Thank you very much. And I agree with my colleagues. I think, this is, I think what Charter, I'm kind of sad that the presentation from Charter is not shared, although it's public. I think it's part of the, I think it's on our package. So if you would like to look, it's really important. But they have made $10 million of investments after purchasing the property, and more to come. So we need to be a partner to succeed in new times. These times have changed and are really hard on retail and offices, and so we really want to make sure that we are being responsive and forward-thinking and doing what we need to do to have successful leasing of creative spaces. When we did this, the eateries and the entertainment spaces and all of those things were things that we were looking to do. So this allows a little flexibility and hopefully a great tenant that will engage and bring our community together and have us continue to be a draw for the region. I do want to thank Mr. Bessanese for coming forward and reaching out to your friend Leon, because that was really important for us to hear. And I think for Charter to understand that it's this communication and partnership is essential for all of us. So we appreciate that very much. And I expect Mr. Dodge to be back any second with the revisions. So I hope that's, and I just do want to say happy anniversary to Mr. Sweeney. It's his 9th wedding anniversary, and he's spending it with all of you.
No place
Whitney,
I'd rather
really, the applause goes to his wife.
Yes.
He needs to drink.
be. No place I'd rather be, Madam Mayor.
So no, it is quite a commitment that we all make, and we miss anniversaries and birthdays and many things. So I thank you all. Is he back? Yay, we're done. We're ready.
See, we took that.
And just to confirm, that was emailed to the colleagues on the phone? Mr. Dodge? Does he have earbuds in? Mr. Dodge?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I understand that there was some desire of the town council to amend the proposed ordinance to make the hours of operation more restrictive. Just to explain some of the difficulty that we had in drafting this, like many land use ordinances, this is not the most artfully drafted, and the existing ordinance is written in the negative. And it's also difficult when you use the term midnight and it applies to something that's 7 days a week. That has a different meaning than when you're starting to apply it to certain days of the week. So, Madam Mayor, the amendment that is before you would, and also, Madam Mayor, just sort of temporally, what we think of as Friday night is actually Saturday morning. What we think of as Saturday night is actually Sunday morning. So what we did with the following amendment is this is a substitute ordinance, and this would only change section 2, and the changes as follows. The hours of operation for indoor recreation or amusement facilities would now be, they would not be allowed to operate between 12:01 a.m. and 5 a.m. on Monday, which is really Sunday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, which is really Thursday night, and 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. on Saturday, which is what we would think of as Friday night, and Saturday and Sunday, which is what we would think of as Saturday night. So to put it colloquially, Madam Mayor, the intent of this amendment is that on Friday night and Saturday night, we would allow indoor indoor recreation amusement facilities to stay open until 1 a.m. And on every other night, they would be required to close at midnight. I hope that was clear as mud. And so, Madam Mayor, if the council is so inclined, the council could adopt this amendment. However, I do need to note, Madam Mayor, that in the opinion of my office, this would change the substance and effect of the ordinance. And so as a result, it would require the town council to renotice the public hearing. If the council, another option for the council would be to not adopt the amendment, simply adopt the ordinance as is, and then the council could adopt a more restrictive ordinance at a later date, which would be a similar timeline.
Well, that's a glitch. I mean, I think adopting the ordinance and then having time go by leaves us a little vulnerable if that's, the road we want to take. So,
And just, Madam Mayor, to explain the reasoning in terms of why it is substantive, is there could potentially, I know that, I think that there was one particular user that was requesting this. However, conceivably, there could be other interested parties who were seeking more permissive hours of operation. And so by making it more restrictive, that is a substantive change to the ordinance.
And that's one of the reasons why I think approving it without the amendment, it makes it more challenging. But then you have to, is it a better process for us to reject it without prejudice and then have them come back rather than us posting it?
My suggestion, Madam Mayor, I think would be quicker to adopt it with the amendment and reset it for a public hearing on, I believe, the next regular council meeting is January 10th. There would be another public hearing that night, and the town council could adopt it that night.
When you say adopt with the amendment, you said that is substantive, so we
I apologize, Madam Mayor. The action tonight would be the council would vote to adopt the amendment. So the ordinance is now amended. The amended ordinance would now be re-noticed for a public hearing on January 10th. And then you would have a public hearing, and on January 10th, the council could vote to adopt.
Okay. And so, okay, that's what we will do. All right. So we will vote on the amendment.
And
the
Madam Mayor,
amended
just
ordinance.
because I didn't have an opportunity to consult with the town clerk, I just want to confirm what she would suggest as the timing for the public hearing and et cetera on the 10th.
We do have a public hearing on the 10th that starts at 7 PM. It's a resolution on the execution of the lease. And then we have the 7:30 council meeting. So if you wanted to do one, maybe 6:45 on the 10th?
I think that makes sense, Madam Mayor.
I think so too. Okay. So the motion now is to,
So, Madam Mayor, I would suggest that the deputy mayor move adoption of the amendment that is before that is in the possession of the council. And I would note, I believe Deputy Corporation Counsel Verano did email this to the members of the town council who are not here, so they should have it electronically.
okay, and would this be a roll call vote for this
An amendment can be adopted by a simple voice vote, Madam
Okay,
Mayor.
Thank you. All right, motion.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, move adoption of the amendment.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And so now,
the
Madam Mayor, I
motion-
would suggest a motion to set the amended ordinance for public hearing at 6:45 PM in council chambers on January 10th.
Mr. Sweeney.
Madam Mayor,
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, point of order.
Mr. David?
Do we have an amended ordinance yet? Because we didn't vote on that, Mr. Corporation Counsel.
Madam Mayor, the council just adopted the amendment.
Right.
So the ordinance is now stands before you amended, but you have not adopted the amended ordinance.
Okay.
So it is the amended ordinance that will be subject to public hearing on January 10th.
Madam Mayor, I move that we set a public hearing on January 10th in council chambers for the amended ordinance, that the underlying ordinance of section 177-37.1.c of the Code of West Hartford.
Second.
And just if the deputy
time.
mayor could clarify, that's at 6:45 PM.
At 6:45 PM.
Second as amended.
A motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Okay. And I think if there is no objection, I think we can adjourn, correct? Is there any objection? We are now adjourned. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.